Imagine waking up in a place where there is no police, no courts, no national army, and no king to bring order to the land. Now imagine living surrounded by armed peoples with superior technology and neighbors ready to take your harvest, your home, and even your children. That was exactly how Israel lived after the death of Joshua. The era of the judges was not freedom, it was survival. And worse, that chaos was only beginning, and no one had any idea what was coming next. Joshua had been the leader who kept the tribes united during the conquest. When he died, something invisible broke. Israel lost direction, lost unity, and lost control. No successor arose capable of leading the people as a nation. The result was a dangerous vacuum. Each tribe began to live for itself. And the Bible describes that time with a chilling phrase, "There was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes." That may sound like freedom, but it was the beginning of collapse. Without authority, justice ceased to exist. If someone stole your cattle, kidnapped your family, or destroyed your crops, there was no one to turn to. Justice became revenge, defense became desperation, and survival depended solely on the strength of your clan. It was a world where the strong survived and the weak disappeared. And the most dangerous part had not yet happened. Israel also faced a humiliating military problem. They had entered the Promised Land, but they failed to fully drive out the peoples of the plains. Many enemies had iron chariots, superior weapons, and complete control of the open terrain. Because of this, Israel retreated to the mountains, living in fragile villages without walls, hidden away. The promise existed, but the reality was constant fear, and that fear would shape increasingly worse decisions in the future. Living in the mountains was not freedom, it was disguised desperation. Water had to be stored in cisterns carved into the rock. Food was scarce and uncertain. Crops could be stolen or destroyed at any moment. Instead of prosperity, the people experienced hunger. Instead of rest, they lived in tension. But the worst did not come from outside. It came from within. Israel began to absorb the customs and gods of the surrounding peoples without realizing the danger. If this is already helping you understand what life was like in Israel during that time, in the description, I left an ebook called How to Use the Bible the Best Way, which will help you understand these stories with much more clarity and depth. I also included recommendations for Bibles that are ideal for those who want to truly study and go deeper into God's Word. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications, because that helps this message reach more people. Now stay with me, because what comes next only gets worse. And so begins the most dangerous cycle in Israel's history. The people turned away from God, fell into idolatry, and suffered the consequences. Then came oppression. Enemies plundered, destroyed, and humiliated them. In desperation, Israel cried out to the Lord, and God in His mercy raised up a deliverer. There was peace for a time, but soon everything started again, and with each cycle the fall grew deeper. And the question is, how far would this go? One of these deliverers was Ehud from the tribe of Benjamin, and the detail that seemed like a weakness became his greatest advantage. He was left-handed. In a culture where everyone was trained to fight with the right hand, this made him unpredictable. Israel had been under Moabite oppression for 18 years. The people were humiliated, paying tribute to a foreign king. But no one imagined that deliverance would come through such a risky, almost suicidal plan. Ehud made a double-edged dagger and hid it on his right thigh, where no one would look. He entered the palace bringing tribute to King Eglon and asked for a private audience, saying he had a secret message from God. When they were alone, the air grew heavy. Without warning, he drew the blade with his left hand and drove it into the king's belly. The blow was so deep that he could not pull the weapon out, and in that moment, there was no turning back. The servants delayed taking action, thinking the king was occupied. That delay changed everything. Ehud escaped, gathered men of Israel, and led a decisive attack against Moab. The escape routes were blocked. The enemy army fell, and about 10,000 soldiers died. Israel was freed. There was peace, but there was a silent problem. Freedom always depended on one man, and when that man was gone, everything collapsed again. But the next threat would be even more terrifying. In the north, a new terror arose. 900 iron chariots commanded by Sisera. It was like facing tanks in an open field. Israel had no chance in direct combat. For 20 years, they lived under constant fear. Until, in the midst of that chaos, God raised someone unlikely to lead, a woman named Deborah. And what happens next defies all human logic. Deborah was not a typical warrior, but a prophetess who judged Israel under a palm tree. In a time when no one wanted responsibility, she stood up as a voice of direction. She called Barak and commanded him to gather men to face Sisera. But his response revealed something troubling. He would only go if Deborah went with him. This showed how insecure the people had become. Faith existed, but it was fragile, unstable, and dependent on visible assurance. The plan seemed like a fatal mistake. Barak went down with his army into the valley, exactly where iron chariots were most deadly. It was the worst possible place to fight. But then, something unexpected happened. The sky darkened, and a heavy rain turned the battlefield into thick mud. The chariots got stuck, the horses lost control, and what was an advantage became a weakness. Israel advanced and won. It was not human strategy. It was God turning the battle at the perfect moment. Sisera, the most feared commander, abandoned his war chariot, his greatest advantage, and fled on foot. He found refuge in the tent of Jael, a woman who appeared neutral in the conflict. She welcomed him, gave him milk, covered him, and calmed him. Everything seemed safe, but while he slept exhausted and vulnerable, Jael made a shocking decision. She took a tent peg, a hammer, and in one blow drove it through his head into the ground. The invincible general died in complete silence. Victory came. Israel had peace for a time, but the pattern did not change. Without real transformation, the cycle continued. Then came an even more brutal oppression. The Midianites did not want territory. They wanted to destroy everything. They invaded during harvest season like a swarm of locusts, taking food, animals, and every possible resource. Nothing was left. The people hid, starved, and lived in constant desperation. And worst of all, there seemed to be no way out. It is in this setting that Gideon appears, but not as a hero, rather as someone hiding. He was threshing wheat inside a winepress, an improper place, trying not to be seen. It was pure fear. Then the angel of the Lord appears and calls him a mighty warrior. It seemed contradictory, but God did not see only the present. He saw the potential. Even in the midst of fear, a plan was beginning, and Gideon would play a central role in it. If you're noticing how this cycle of fall and deliverance keeps repeating, in the description I left the ebook, How to Use the Bible the Best Way, which can help you understand all of this in a clear and structured way. There are also Bible recommendations for those who want to go beyond the surface and truly study God's Word. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications, because that strengthens this kind of content. Now pay close attention, because from here on, the story becomes even more intense. When Gideon calls men for battle, 32,000 respond. It finally looks like a strong army. But then comes an unexpected command from God. They are still too many. If they won like that, they would think it was their own doing. So the army begins to shrink. First, the fearful go home. Then another test separates the rest. In the end, only 300 men remain. Against thousands, no advantage, only faith, and an impossible mission. The strategy made no military sense. No swords, no direct combat. Each man received a trumpet, a clay jar, and a torch hidden inside it. At night, they surrounded the enemy camp in total silence. At the right moment, they broke the jars, revealed the torches, and blew the trumpets all at once. The sound echoed, light appeared from every side, and the enemy fell into total panic, not understanding what was happening. In the darkness, chaos took over. The Midianites began attacking each other, confused, desperate, and without direction. The army destroyed itself from within. Gideon won without needing to fight directly. It was a clear victory, impossible to explain without God. But even after that, nothing changed permanently, because the problem was never only external. The real crisis was in the heart of the people, and that would bring even worse consequences. Over time, a new leader emerges in an even more unstable situation. Jephthah was not respected. He was rejected. The son of a prostitute, he was driven out of his own home and lived as an outcast. But when Israel needed a leader against the Ammonites, they went to him. Necessity overcame prejudice. He agreed but made a condition. If he won, he would become ruler. And there, a silent mistake began, one that would cost dearly. Before the battle, Jephthah made a reckless vow. He promised that if he returned victorious, he would sacrifice whatever first came out of his house to meet him. He won, but when he returned, the one who came out celebrating was his only daughter. The moment of victory turned into tragedy. The promise became a sentence, and this reveals something deep. Israel was not just politically lost, it was completely disconnected from God spiritually. While Israel struggled through cycles of deliverance and collapse, a new enemy rose, the Philistines. Unlike others, they mastered iron, had superior weapons, and strategic control of cities. Israel was practically unarmed before them. It is in this context that Samson is born, set apart from the womb to begin deliverance. But there was a problem. The greatest threat was not outside, it was within him. Samson had supernatural strength. He tore lions apart with his bare hands, defeated enemies alone, and spread fear wherever he went. But his life was marked by impulses and poor choices. He got involved with the enemy, ignored his vows, and acted driven by desire. Instead of leading, he reacted. Instead of protecting, he exposed himself. The strength meant to free Israel was being used without direction, and it was preparing his inevitable fall. After repeated conflicts with the Philistines, Samson becomes involved with Delilah. The enemy leaders offer her money to discover the secret of his strength. She insists, pressures, manipulates, until he gives in. Samson reveals what he never should have said. His strength was tied to his vow and his hair. That night, while he slept, his hair was cut, and with it, something invisible broke within him. When Samson wakes up, he thinks everything is normal, but it isn't. His strength is gone. He is easily captured, his eyes are gouged out, and he is turned into a slave. The man who once caused fear is now a source of mockery. He grinds grain like an animal, living in darkness. But while he is imprisoned, something begins to change. His hair grows, and with it comes one last chance to fulfill his purpose. In a great temple, the Philistines celebrate, believing they have defeated the God of Israel. Samson is brought out to be displayed. Blind, humiliated, led by a boy. He asks to touch the temple pillars, and then he makes one final prayer. Not long, not elaborate, just sincere. He pushes with all his strength. The temple collapses. Thousands die, and Samson too. His greatest victory was also his end. But even after all of this, Israel did not change. The problem was never just the lack of leaders, it was the absence of God at the center of life. And then the story reaches its darkest point. It is no longer an external enemy. Now, the people themselves become the problem. In a city called Gibeah, something happens that reveals the true depth of Israel's moral collapse. And what comes next is disturbing. A Levite, a religious man, arrives in the city with his concubine. They seek shelter and are welcomed into a house. But during the night, a mob surrounds the place demanding violence. What happens next is shocking. To save himself, the Levite hands over the woman. She is abused all night and left dead at the door. That night was not just a crime. It was proof that Israel had completely lost its identity. But what follows is even more disturbing. The Levite takes the body and cuts it into 12 pieces, sending each piece to a tribe of Israel. It was a desperate call for justice. And it worked. The entire nation rises. But what begins as outrage quickly turns into something greater. It is no longer just about justice. It becomes vengeance. And that pushes Israel to the edge of total chaos. The tribe of Benjamin refuses to hand over the guilty men, and this triggers a civil war. Israel against Israel, brother against brother. Days of battle, thousands dead, cities destroyed. In the end, Benjamin is almost wiped out. The nation wins, but realizes too late it destroyed itself. It was not the enemy that brought Israel down. It was Israel itself, and that changes everything. And so ends the era of the judges, not with victory, but with a warning. A people without direction, without leadership, and without God at the center becomes capable of destroying itself. The Bible sums it all up in one sentence. There was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes, and the truth is harsh. When man lives far from God, he does not lose his way little by little. He loses it completely. And maybe you think this story stayed in the past, but it didn't. Today, many people live exactly like this, without direction, doing what they think is right, trying to control their own lives, and reaping confusion, emptiness, and pain. But there is a way out. God did not leave humanity lost. He sent Jesus, the only one who can restore, forgive, and give a new beginning. The question is not whether you know this story. It is whether you have given your life to Him. If today you realize you are far from God, this is the moment to return. You don't need perfect words, just sincerity. Talk to Him now, ask for forgiveness, surrender your life, and start again. Because unlike the era of the judges, you don't have to live without direction. In Jesus, there is the way, the truth, and the life. If this video helped you see the Bible in a different way, in the description, I left the ebook, How to Use the Bible the Best Way, to help you study with clarity and depth. There are also recommendations of the best Bibles for those who want to truly go deeper into God's Word. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications. And click now on the video that is appearing on your screen to keep learning more about God's Word with us. I'll see you there. God bless you.